Welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Gwen. I'm a clinical psychologist who's obsessed with empowering disabled individuals, their families, and the systems that support them. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, where I curate tips and tricks to helping neurodiverse individuals thrive. In this video, I interview Rhonda Daniels, Executive Director of Moving Forward Towards Independence. Moving Forward is a residential program in Napa, California that provides transitional and independent living support to adults with developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, and autism spectrum disorders. We learn about Moving Forward's graduated support levels, or three-tiered program, and get a clear sense of their mission, which is to help each individual achieve their personal potential across all areas of life. What's so cool about Moving Forward is that the program supports a wide range of abilities and is considered a lifelong program for non-college bound individuals. As you take this interview in with Rhonda, I want to encourage you to think about what it means to be embraced and to have a lifelong community. Hi, Rhonda. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you, Gwen.
Yeah, I have wanted to really dive into moving forward towards independence, for a while. So this is really, really fantastic that we're going to get to talk and get more into the program. But maybe we can start by you telling us about yourself.
Sure. I've been with Moving Forward for 15 years, done every job there is to do, and I've been the executive director for the past 5. And prior to that, I had a 26-year career as a vocational counselor in the workers' comp system. So I had an opportunity to work with people in a variety of situations and help them identify new career choices when they physically couldn't do their old choices. So when an opportunity came up as a community resource specialist with Moving Forward, I thought it fit my skills perfectly, and that's where I jumped in.
Yeah, and that background is so informative.
Yeah.
Based on what you're doing now. That's fantastic. And let's get into, moving forward, talk to us about your program or describe it for people who don't know it.
Okay. So we're a post-secondary residential program started 22 years ago by a group of 6 families who were looking for a place for their non-college bound 22-year-olds to go. They started the program as a independent living skills program, and 22 years later, we've grown into a 3-tiered program. The first tier is called Transitional Living 1. Many folks who come to that program have never lived away from home before. Some have, some been in other programs, but the young men and women live together in a home and they operate as a family. They learn how to cook and clean and do their laundry. They learn to bank and budget, follow a schedule. Hopefully they learn how to make a friend and keep a friend, how to get a job and keep a job. But it's 24/7 teaching independent living skills and social skills. And during that period of time, often about a year, we have very close contact with the family, conferences, telephone conferences weekly, a lot of give and take with the parents. And at some point, the team, including our staff and the family, realize the resident is ready to move to the second tier. So we have an apartment building next door that we don't own, but we occupy all 4 2-bedroom apartments. So this gives our residents a chance to graduate, if you will, into their own apartment with a roommate, their own bedroom. And this is where they begin to learn how to shop, make healthy choices, budget, buy household goods, share with a roommate. And all the time, our expectations of them are the same as it was from day one, that they participate in our program, that they go to work if they're working. And eventually, when the team feels that they're ready, they join what we call our community living program, our 3rd tier. For many, this is a lifelong program. It doesn't have to be. But right now we have about 30 folks who live in the community, which means it could be as close as next door or across the street, or within 5 or 6 blocks of us. And they live in their own rental or a family-owned home with roommates. And we serve them in their homes. And I think the beauty of moving forward is the wide range of abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Our folks range in age from 18 to mid-50s now. And we have folks in our community living program who are married, who both drive, who care for animals, live in a family-owned home. And we have others who will always need to be administered meds and help cleaning their place and help structuring their social calendar. So we have a wide variety of abilities, but our mission in whatever phase of the program the resident is in is that they achieve their highest level of independence in both work and living.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing that's always attracted me to your program is this kind of tiered model and this nod to, even through your tiered model, that even when they get to that third tier, that they may always need some level of support to live a healthy and safe life.
Right.
But that they can. They can do that
They
with
sure
support.
can.
So
Yeah.
I've always loved that about your program, that it is really taking into account the reality of the situation, right? And that, you really can serve a lot of different individuals.
Right.
And that it's not time limited, which is great. It doesn't sound like it's time limited anyway to me.
It's not time limited at all on our part. As I said, for many, it's become a lifelong program.
Mhm.
And for those who it isn't, they're welcome to come and stay for a year or 2 or 3 or 4. And some go back to their home communities, some move on to a different kind of program, but it is not time limited for us.
Yeah. Rhonda, in your first year, what is, they're living kind of as a family together in a home. What are your staff ratios at that level?
So we have one person who sleeps over at night in one of the houses that serves all 44 residents. So we're not a program that has a person sleeping in each area. Our
Mhm.
folks are really high functioning, very independent, safe.
Mhm.
And for 22 years, it's worked that we've had one person sleep over. Now,
Mhm.
during the day, we have all kinds of staff coming and going. And again, though, you might come to our program 1 o'clock in the afternoon and not see any staff at all because they may be taking someone shopping or to a doctor's appointment or to a variety of things. So you might not see staff, which means clients have to occupy themselves at times.
Mhm.
But for every, for example, for the woman's house, there's a case manager, and she is the resident's go-to person. She only works 40 hours a week, so we pride ourselves in being very deep with support staff so that the resident and the family always have someone to contact. But that person is responsible to make sure that all of the residents' needs are met. So if that person works 12 to 8 p.m. and that their resident needs a fasting blood test, we're not going to make the resident wait till noon. So another staff would take them at 8 a.m. So we work as a team and we're very deep that way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think that is, we were going to get into, and maybe we can get into this now, which is, who's that ideal client or resident for you, where, wow, when someone comes to us with this general set of skills
Right.
or profile, they really can thrive at moving forward. What
Right.
kind of resident or client would that be?
So there's $1 million question.
I know.
I think that a person who's motivated, someone who is ready and wants to leave home, someone who's motivated to become as independent as possible, and someone who is somewhat of a rule follower, enough of a rule follower to be safe, because we promote independence. And from day one pre-COVID, when residents come to us, they can be with staff 24/7 if they need to be. But our goal in both the world of work and in independent living is that they become as independent as possible, that they foster friendships and they're able to go to downtown Napa on their own, take a
Mm-hmm.
class at Napa Valley College with support, but that they don't have to be with staff at all times. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, that takes a month until someone who's very tech savvy and who's used to being independent learns their way around the small town of Napa. And it can literally take a couple of years for those who really need support and aren't safe in the community. But I would think, to reiterate the answer, someone who's motivated, someone who wants to be here and wants to has the same goals as their family has and as we have, that they want to be able to set goals for themselves, which might be to get a job, might be to take meds independently, might be to follow a schedule. That's one of the hardest things for our folks.
Mm-hmm.
With such a wide age range, 18 to mid 50s, the labels of our clients are going to vary based on when they were born. High functioning autism, Asperger's, developmental disabilities, Down syndrome. But really what our folks have in common is that they are all pretty slow processors. And
Mm.
I often say they can run circles around me with technology, pop culture, fashion, but making plans for the weekend and following through when their peers cancel out on them can be the biggest disaster of their lives. And
Yeah.
it's that executive functioning and processing that we try to support our folks with. And we have disappointments in our lives, they have disappointments in their lives, and help them navigate that.
Yeah, that's lovely. That there's that commonality there. Isn't that funny? I can relate to this, where I'm like, I don't know I don't know how to do this tech wise, but boy, my client can tell me all the different ways, to solve
Right,
that problem. But now we need to back up and figure out when we should go to sleep.
right,
And we have a whole nother situation. Yeah,
right,
got it. Got it. So that first phase, which it sounds, or tier, where, you've got adults that are transitioning to trying independent living, maybe for their first time, no matter what
right,
age they are,
right.
moving out of their family home, and this. Do you find, Rhonda, that your clients are able to set reasonable goals? I mean, sometimes goal setting is really interesting, but how do you approach that? Sometimes the goal setting can be interesting.
Well, most people's goal is to move to the next step. That's, they want their own apartment, they want to move into the community living. So most of their goals are just, foreseeing the future when they can be as independent as possible. So it's our staff who helps them break down what they need to be able to do to move to that next step. And often initially it's just, can you follow your schedule? We'll make your
Mm,
schedule together. We'll list the moving forward classes. We'll list whatever else in your life in Napa that you need to keep a schedule for. And your only goal is to stick to your schedule. And that's very hard for a lot of our folks. For others, it's take your meds independently, and we'll go through steps doing that. It's, like I said, getting a job, because the vocational part of our program is huge, which I'm sure we'll get to.
mm-hmm.
Um, but whatever, we try to break down the goals with them and make them very realistic, set our folks up for success, celebrate each achievement, and, just keep setting more goals.
Yeah. That's great. Let's get into the vocational program,
Yeah.
and the types of classes you guys offer, because that's
Okay.
different than like going down to Napa Community
Right.
College, right?
Right.
So let's talk about the focus of your classes.
So, what I call classes could be a group of 4 people, 6 people, could be 12 or 20, but they're all social skill development classes, support group classes. They teach independent living skills. So of course we have the usual job readiness and budgeting and banking and, decision making, but we also, and now our monthly safety class is now a weekly safety class with COVID. But we also try to match our clients' interests with our staff's skill. So
Mm.
last year, prior to COVID, we added a book group. We had a group of, happened to be young women who were really interested in reading a book together, staff who was willing to meet with them weekly to discuss it. We formed a book group. We had a group of gals and guys who wanted to do Pokemon Go, and I don't even know what that is to this day, but we had a staff who loved Pokemon Go, and he got a group of folks together, and every Wednesday, 3:30 to 5, they went walking in Napa to catch Pokemon on their phones. But it's such a perfect example of how when we start out with a class that's driven by our client's interest and our staff's skill, we get a group of people together who normally wouldn't give each other a second look, and they start catching Pokemon together, and pretty soon the group has dispersed into, instead of meeting Wednesday 3:30 to 5, do you want to go Thursday night and walk around downtown Napa and catch Pokemon? So these splinter groups splinter off, and we have these folks, exercising independent living skills, being social with peers they wouldn't have spoken to had they not had some common interest. And it's just the most beautiful thing to see that, from a staff-supported, client-driven interest group, people become independent and do things together. Some of our other classes, social skills classes, we have many staff who are very artistic. So we're lucky to have an art room, and we have 3 different art classes a week. Right now we have a gratitude committee that I want to show gratitude to the people in Napa who are supporting us through this time.
Mm-hmm.
We have sing-alongs. We have psychologists who come in and do real support groups. We've had grief groups. We've had communication groups. We have a wonderful retired speech therapist who has worked individually with some of our folks. And I got the idea that she could work with the folks who don't express themselves freely. And she's been doing this communication class with a group. And we hear from all outside sources, wow, so-and-so's really opened up and communicated, and they have no idea that they're in this group. And then we have the people who, have no boundaries and don't know when to stop talking, and she's working with them on listening. So, whatever. So those are a sampling of our social skills classes that we offer.
Yeah.
I think one of our best programs that we offer in the community, people can't wait to move into the 3rd tier and live on their own in the community. They're no sooner moved out and they think, oh my goodness, what do I do now? I'm living alone, or I only have 1 or 2 roommates, but they're working. So we've developed our dinner group program, and that's for folks in the community. And if you and me and 2 other folks were residents at Moving Forward, and we were doing a Monday night dinner group, tonight it would be my turn to, with my case manager, plan, shop for, and prepare dinner. And then you and the other 2 folks would come to my apartment or house, and you'd be learning how to be a good guest, and I'd be learning how to be a good host. And out of those dinner groups have developed all kinds of unlikely friendships, and it's staff-led. The conversation is staff-led, and depending on the time of year, they might, watch the Warriors or watch the 49ers and go for a walk. So it's just a wonderful part of our program that gets people together who normally wouldn't. And, it helps with not having a frozen dinner for a 7th night, and eating healthy and sharing food with other people. So it's been a wonderful program.
Yeah. And, one of your missions, that I've always seen whenever I hop on your website is this kind of development of a lifelong community. Yeah. This idea of having a community of peers and people that I can see myself living happily with for the rest of my life,
Right.
Not saying that there are not any bumps, in the road, but
Right.
But how wonderful it is to have the support, to even have the experience to host a dinner party,
Right.
Right. Or to be a guest at a dinner party, and that everyone's learning. So Yes. It really allows everyone to give it a try without too much risk anyway, which is so great. It's so great. I love those dinner parties.
Yeah, so we have men's group and we have women's group. And one of the funnest things that happened, I think right before COVID, January or February, is one of our male case managers took a group of guys to a bar to play pool. And some of these guys in their 20s and 30s had never been able to walk up to a bar and order a drink, and pay for a drink, and tip, and then just come back and shoot pool. And most of them ordered soda, one or two ordered a beer, but it was just such a appropriate thing for a 20 to 30-year-olds to be doing. So we try to really get them out doing the kinds of things they want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's right, like that they want to do. How do you guys, Rhonda, how do you guys handle dating? And I know that with lots of programs, it's a real tricky situation sometimes to handle dating, but that's just a part of adult life.
Yeah, no, it's never been tricky for us. In the men's house and the women's house, after move-in day, no men or women can go upstairs in the other person's house. This, we encourage dating. We teach about, these folks, just like any other middle school kids, learn about dating and sex through movies, and that's not always reality. So we spend a lot of time trying to teach, whether it's the gal or the guy, what a date would look like and what's appropriate for a first and second and third date, and encouraging them to, do what we think is appropriate. Once they move into their own apartment, they can certainly have their boyfriends or girlfriends stay over and go into their rooms with them, just not in the community houses. But we really encourage dating. We encourage double dating. We've got a lot of couples who go out, out together, which is just so nice, lovely friendships. But, it's never been something that was hard for us. We just saw it as natural. I think the hardest thing for some of our staff and some of our parents is because most of our folks have never really had a boyfriend or girlfriend before they came, that once they have one, the families seem to think that's going to last forever. So when the first breakup happens, it's heartbreaking, worse for the parents and the staff than the resident. But we always remind the families that, hey, you and I had plenty of heartbreak before we found our mate. And isn't this a great problem to have, that, your son or daughter did have love in their life, and now they'll have to move on. So we really just treat it as part of life.
Yeah. And, maybe we can touch upon that point of, parent involvement. You were saying that there's some parent meetings, especially in the first phase or first tier when someone comes. Maybe can you talk a little bit more about how parents are involved in that first tier?
So moving forward is really unique in many ways, but I think we're very unique in how we partner with the families, that we encourage the families' involvement. Most live far away so that they're not in Napa. But when a person first comes to the program, prior to entering, we've had many conversations. We've had a tour with the family. We've had a sleepover with the potential residents. So we've already built some kind of rapport. Once the family drops off the resident, we try to have a formal meeting at the 90 to 120 day mark, because we think that it takes that long to acclimate to a new program, whether it's a first time away from home program or we're the fifth program they've tried. A good 3 or 4 months will tell them a lot about moving forward and tell us a lot about the resident. So we'll have a formal meeting at that point. But up until that point, the case managers had weekly telephone conferences with the family. And we learn more about the resident by talking to the family, and the family knows what's going on and moving forward. We're also available 24/7 if they need us, but there is definitely a weekly conference. After that third or fourth month, if it's decided, this is looks like it's going to work, and we set some goals, then we formally meet at the year anniversary and every year after that. But we're totally in contact with the resident's family on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's so great, because I see that in so many times transition is also difficult for the parent or for the parents, right? Who've spent a significant part of their adult child's life advocating for them and organizing support and coordinating and scheduling and transporting, and now they're gone.
Right.
So,
it can be very hard for some people. Our case managers do everything that a parent would do, and they don't have to worry about that anymore. They also don't have to have tug of wars with their adult children anymore, because we do that. And they can come to Napa and take their son or daughter out to dinner and enjoy the time together, and not be
Yes.
that role of disciplinarian and, financial issues. And so there's, they get to see the upside pretty quickly. And then
Yeah.
lastly, I think moving forward is really unique in that we're not just a community for our residents. We really are a community for our families. And
Mm.
we only formally meet 3 times a year for lunch. But out of those 3 times a year meetings, incredible friendships have been developed, where families have ended up traveling to Europe together and
Mm.
really relying on each other. So it's a lovely community of families.
That's awesome. So it's not only building lifelong communities for your residents, but also for their families, which
Yeah,
that's that's such a beautiful thing that's happening there.
yeah,
Hey, Rhonda, can we get into the vocational piece
yes,
of moving forward? Let's
yeah.
let's talk about that and how you guys are helping the vocational development of your
Okay.
residents.
It's a very strong part of our program. So everything I'm saying now is pre-COVID, and I'm sure we'll talk about post-COVID. But from day one, our residents start volunteering. So anybody who's not working but participates in volunteer. We'll volunteer at the food bank, the library. We've gone to convalescent hospitals. We've gone to farmers markets. But they're developing pre-vocational skill training from day one. And I think that's so valuable that, if I have to pitch in and staff the food bank volunteer, and someone says to me, well, that's not the way someone else does it. And I said, you know what, today I'm the boss and we're doing it my way. And this is what's going to happen in real life. So they really learn from day one, start developing good pre-vocational skills. Some of our folks qualify for the regional center system. All
Mhm.
of our folks qualify for the Department of Rehabilitation system. So during the first month, we get them enrolled with the Department of Rehabilitation, which supports our folks in finding employment. And through the Department of Rehab, our folks get an opportunity to try real work situations. So they might do a 1 or 2 week, 20-hour-a-week vocational assessment. They might do a 3 or 6 month work hardening program. They could do several of these until we find the right match. So initially, we're trying to find barriers to employment. What's going to work best for this resident? Once we think we find a niche for our resident, then if they appear to be job ready, then we start the looking for work process. And interestingly, for most people, it's usually easier to match our folks with a job they can do than to teach our folks what I call the soft skills. Because if somebody's going to be a bagger at a grocery store and they're very well qualified and skilled for that very difficult job,
Mhm.
they usually do very well on the job. But if it's a union shop and they're working 8 hours and they have to take an hour break in the break room, often our folks haven't a clue of how to navigate a break room and make small talk with other people, and what to do when they're finished eating their lunch in 5 minutes. So it's the soft skills of supporting our clients through employment that I think is the most important thing we do once they find a job. Right before, let's say, March 15th, we had 44 residents in the program. We try to stick right around 40 to 45 residents. And on March 15th, before COVID started, we had 19 who were competitively employed, meaning they were working in a variety of settings with or without a job coach. Some had been in jobs literally 14 years, some had been in jobs 14 days. But on March 15th, we had 19 folks competitively employed that we were supporting. We had about 10 folks who were in regional center supported day work programs. And we had about 10 folks who were in some phase of looking for work. One was in a culinary program. One was taking classes at Napa Valley College. A couple are not going to be working and they were volunteering in their own special volunteer position. So that's typical for us at any one time, that we have a good amount of people working. Napa is a hospitality area. So most of our folks are working in the hospitality field. They're working in hotels, they're working in restaurants, grocery stores. We have folks who are self-employed doing bookkeeping out of their home. We have a
Mm.
good handful who are always wanting to work with animals. And we have people who, have jobs working with animals. We've had people working in retail. So, we have a really great track record with helping place our folks in jobs and supporting them and helping them keep their jobs.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've also developed relationships with your community businesses as well.
Yeah. That's the key, because Napa
Yeah.
really is a small town. It's a great big tourist area, but it really is a small town. And our community resource specialist, who's our liaison for our residents to all things volunteer, school, and work, does a great job of developing and keeping up with those relationships.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. That's great. There's this real eye on daily living, vocational training and placement, and then with this kind of ultimate goal of getting you as independent as possible, but whatever that looks like for you, in what you got.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Rhonda, what would you say your desired outcomes are for your clients? I know that can change, obviously, for each of your residents, but when can you be like, yeah, that really worked. That really worked for this person. That what we did, that's good.
That's an interesting question, because part of me wants to say never, and part of me wants to say, it's interesting. People assume that the folks in tier 1 are going to need more support than the folks in tier 3.
Mm.
And I think what happens as our residents age, their families are aging.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who's really independent, just goes through our program from the house to the apartment, and they're living independently in their own place. Sometimes those who are the most safe, the most independent, the most happy, sometimes life happens to them just like it happens to you and me. First we see the beloved family pet pass away, and that's a big loss.
Mm-hmm.
Then we start seeing the grandparents pass away, and that is a big loss. And eventually one or both parents start passing away. So even though our residents are independent and living alone or with others, and like I said, some who drive, some who care for pets, some who are married, but life happens. And as their family experience trauma, there are setbacks. There's always going to be setbacks, just like there would be for you and me. The other thing that happens as our folks age is their bodies deteriorate. And, we have residents who have medical issues that have nothing to do with their intellectual disability. We've had knee replacements, we've had cancer surgeries, we've had trips to the emergency room. Life happens. And so the most independent person is probably going to have a setback at some point, whether it's a death in the family or something to their own health. So, that's why I said my first thought is, it never ends.
Yep. Well, and what's so comforting is that because there isn't this kind of time limit to your program, and because there is this graduated kind of support that you can access. What's so nice is that when someone comes into moving forward as a resident, if it's a good fit, and everything's working, that they could be supported by moving forward forever for them, right? On some level. And that's unusual, I think, in a transition program. Well, I don't want to necessarily call you a transition program, but this idea of, wow, like there isn't that pressure of, okay, well, you better produce.
Yeah, I don't think that, I just don't think that's realistic. We have a couple of residents for whom we are their 5th program, and things are working out really well. And their families have said, oh, we should have come to you first. Well, the resident probably wasn't ready for our program 10,
Yep.
15 years ago. And I try to tell families that they really need to find the best program for their son or daughter for now. Because, none of us, um, when we all went to college, we may have had 2 or 3 roommates before things worked out and we found the right roommate. Some of us went to more than one college before we found out, where our niche was. And I don't think that, parents of an 18-year-old or a 22-year-old can necessarily predict that moving forward is the place for their son or daughter for the rest of their life. But if it fits now, then I think that's where they need to focus. And I always tell parents that I really believe there's a program out there for everybody. And it might not be moving forward, but there is something out there that's right for their son or daughter. So that I think that's the thing to focus on is where's the best place for them to be at now.
Yeah, and that's such a lovely that's so lovely because then you don't kind of get caught up in the anxiety of
No.
things, right? And maybe it really nudges a parent or the system to look at who the adult is now, right? What are the pain points? And I kind of talk about pain points or pressure points that programs or services or interventions ease, right? And so really looking at the fact that, hey, you know what, we all change and evolve. And so that's just such a realistic and reasonable, practical way of looking at
Right.
needs.
And Gwen, I always like to talk about what we're not,
Yeah.
because we are not a therapeutic program. Most of our clients do see a therapist and psychiatrist, and we are very involved in working with them. And many of our folks experience anxiety and depression, but we are not a therapeutic program.
Mm-hmm.
We're also not an educational program. We'll support our folks in going to Napa Valley College or Napa Adult School. We'll do whatever it takes to help them be successful there, but we are not an educational program. And we're not a medical program. So if people need medical support, we will, in conjunction with their family, find the best medical support for them, but that's not what we do. So I think that's important also.
That is really important, Rhonda, because this is when people are really clear about your program,
Right.
that's when your program really can work its magic.
Yeah.
When those factors line up, it's important. I think sometimes people have a difficult time understanding what a therapeutic program is. I think especially here in California, because a lot of times when you talk about residential programs that are not in California, they're typically therapeutic residential programs. But
Right.
maybe what you can do, can you just kind of define what a therapeutic program is and how that's different from moving forward?
Yeah. I'm not sure I can define what a therapeutic program is, but I can tell you that what we do is teach independent living skills and teach social skills. So we don't do behavior modification. And the reason we don't do that is our staff isn't skilled and trained in that type of activity. And we have so many different staff coming and going that, that's not what we do. We're here to help our residents set goals and achieve those goals in small steps. But like I said, we don't, we're not here to do behavior modification. We're certainly not here to deal with substance abuse, because that the type of staff that we hire doesn't have that kind of background.
Yeah.
Our staff has background in teaching. Our staff has background in social work. Our staff often has experience working with this population in a variety of settings, but we aren't, licensed clinicians. And that's what I think of when I think of a therapeutic program.
Yeah, yeah, where there's a real main focus on mental health and
Yes.
that kind of emotional support.
Right.
You're really talking about, filling the gap with the actual skill building of the skills that you need as an adult.
Right. And
Yeah.
as I said, that doesn't mean that the majority of our folks don't have a
Yep.
psychiatrist and a therapist that we're very involved with. but it's that we're not providing that.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's an important distinction because a
Yes.
lot of times with therapeutic residential programs, all of those services are provided in house and
Right.
comprehensively provided in house, right?
Right.
So it's not unusual then for your residents to access that on their own with obviously with support from you,
Right.
but it is an important distinction, and I think the more that people understand that, the better that is. And but part of these interviews are really are trying to pull apart the weeds and to actually figure these things out, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or misinformation out there about transition programs. When you talk
Right.
about transition programs, you and I both know there are lots of them.
Yes.
They're all some of them are very common, but they're all very different. They have a
Right.
different personality in and of themselves. So that's
Right.
that's a great thing to distinguish. Rhonda, how do people typically pay for moving forward?
So it is private pay. At the first step of our program, one cannot access their regional center funding if they have it. So it's straight private pay. It's a fee for service. Once the person lives in an apartment where they're paying a third party rent,
Mm-hmm.
then they can access their regional center funding if they have it. And the regional center will defray the cost of moving forward by about $1,300 a month, because we're vendorized for ILS, which is independent living skills. Then that's different than SLS, supported living skills. Supported living skills could be 24/7, and certainly more than the 35 that we're authorized for. The reason we're vendorized at a max of 35 hours a month from regional center is because the folks that benefit from our program are higher functioning and wouldn't need the 24/7 kind of support. Many of our folks do not qualify for regional centers, so they pay privately throughout the program. And I typically tell families that whether they're paying fees to moving forward in the first phase, which are almost $5,000 a month, or they're paying fees in the second and third phase, which are less to moving forward, but then they're paying for rent, household expenses, utilities, food. I always tell folks that it's probably going to be between $4,000 and $5,000 a month to support their adult for the rest of their lives living
Mm-hmm.
in Napa.
Mm-hmm.
And that's based on rent and it's based on needs. Now, that doesn't mean they can't use the Social Security money that might come in. They can't use part of the income that their family member would earn by working. But I think it's a fair estimate that wherever the money is going, it's going to be between $4,000 and $5,000 a month to support this individual.
Yeah, that's good. And that's, and to be quite honest, it's actually, I hate to say this, quite reasonable. Only because, I've spoken to programs who are $200,000 to $300,000 a year. So, and this is why, I mean, this is part of the reason why, I wanted to do some of these interviews as well, which is, how do we try to offset some things in regards to just accessing high quality, good information for free,
Mhm.
right? How do we start doing that for families in our community? Because it does take a village
Yeah, that's for sure.
to raise our tribe. And so,
Yeah,
this is a realistic thing. And I talk about funding in all of my interviews with programs because it's a part of
yeah,
the reality of a program.
yes,
Um, and being in California, because there's a lot of people coming from out of state, I imagine, that don't have the regional center,
correct.
kind of understanding when someone comes from out of state and becomes a resident at moving forward, do they then are they then eligible for regionals? That's if they qualify, obviously, but would
Yeah,
they
they're
become,
eligible.
they would be eligible.
They're eligible to apply,
Hmm.
and if they qualify, then they begin to receive services.
Yeah, cool. That's good to know. That's really good to
Yeah.
know. Awesome. Awesome, Rhonda. Okay. So, I always end off my interviews with this question, which is
Uh-oh.
yeah, if you could only choose one skill to empower in one of your residents or a client, what would that be and why?
I think it would be to follow a schedule that was developed by themselves and the people who support them. Because if they trust themselves and the people who support them and they can stick to the schedule, I think everything else will fall into place. The
Mhm.
financial aspects of living their life will fall into place. The social aspects will fall into place. The emotional support, the nutrition, everything will fall into place if they trust that they can follow the schedule they help develop for themselves.
Mhm. It's almost like that lever, it's the one or the first domino in the
Yeah,
whole sequence of things, when
yeah,
you can get that in place. Well, and you and I both know the importance of a schedule,
yeah,
and predictability and routine and
right,
these for any of us for that matter.
right, right.
But that's awesome. Awesome. Well, Rhonda, if anyone's listening to this interview or seeing this interview, what's the best way for people to find out more about you or to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm really proud of our website, moving-forward.org. That's the first place they should go. And then they can call me directly at 415-302-4614.
Yes, and I'm here to attest for the fact that that is her number, and she does respond. So it's so awesome. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for doing this
You're
interview with
welcome.
me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in finding out more about moving forward towards independence, contact Rhonda. Her contact information is in the description below. Additional information about moving forward and this interview can also be found on my website, which I'll also link in the description below. If you got any value from this interview, please hit that like button and subscribe. Doing so helps to get this information to others just like you. See you in the next video, and thanks for watching.